In this episode of Passion for Impact, I have the cool honor of chatting with Shannon Christensen, founder and CEO of Mamas for Mamas, a specialized poverty relief agency and an all-inclusive community for mothers and caregivers. Mamas for Mamas envisions a future where no mama or child is left behind. Now, as a mom myself, I can't imagine the stress of needing things, basic things, for my kids and not being able to go out and get them. But this is the reality for many women and families. Now, this organization is a powerful bridge and provider of not only goods and necessities, but also hope and community and connection. Shannon's story, her inspiring story, is a powerful example of seeing a need, feeling a calling, and believing in a dream. Are you ready to be inspired and empowered to engineer even more impact in your business and life? Grab your favorite beverage and let's have a conversation.
This is the Passion for Impact podcast with speaker, trainer, and socially conscious advocate Tricia Miltimore.
Thank you for joining in. This is the Passion for Impact podcast, where we have one clear goal: to educate, empower, and elevate social consciousness in people, business, and teams. Be sure to subscribe to receive links to featured companies, people, and offers. To subscribe, visit passionigniter.ca/podcast. My guest today is a most inspiring nurturer of the human spirit. Her impact is felt close to home and also across the country. Shannon Christensen is passionate about her family, friends, and her community. She's also a mom of 2 young boys. With a BA in psychology and a master's of counseling psychology, she has a passion for working with marginalized populations and used this drive to start Mamas for Mamas, a registered nonprofit organization dedicated to reducing the negative impact of poverty on low-income mothers and their families. Shannon has been recognized as a top 40 under 40 recipient, a woman to watch, yes she is, and was a top 3 finalist for Women of the Year through the City of Kelowna Civic and Community Awards. So here's a really big question to ask. What if we broke down the barriers of social class and invited mamas of every socioeconomic background to join an online community where everything was free or traded? I mean, all baby items, kids' clothing, gear, and household items that were being sold online are now free. And the only expectation is you just have to be kind to your fellow mama to receive what you needed. Now, this is the question that started it all. To tell us more and to share her really powerful and I don't know. Her story is just so, I relate to it so in so many different ways. Let's invite Shannon to the show. Shannon, hi. How are you? Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Tricia. I really appreciate it.
I'm really excited about this conversation because we were kind of talking right before we started recording, but there's so much about your story that I think people can just relate to, because it's not like you had this massive grand vision in the beginning and you knew all the steps and you just went for it with grit and vision. It just wasn't like that. So Mamas for Mamas, tell us what is Mamas for Mamas and how did it start?
Well, it's funny because, Mamas for Mamas, much like women, is an ever evolving being. And, in the beginning, she was, a dream that I had to create a village, a community for mamas where kindness was the currency. We needed to break down this sense of competition. And so, as a young mama, I had 2 little babes, basically a newborn and a 3-year-old. And I had just finished my master's and I was working in the forensic field, and I just didn't have a lot of joy in my life other than my babies, and I didn't have anybody with whom to share that joy. I was 26 with 2 babies. Most of my friends were out in university or traveling, and I really just felt that deep desire to belong. And motherhood hadn't really given me the most wonderful welcome. My baby was 7 weeks early. He was preemie. It was scary. My dad had passed away the year before unexpectedly of a heart attack, actually the day after I got married. And so my world was in such turmoil in so many ways that I just wanted to find a place where mamas could exist peacefully without turmoil. And so, I was speaking with my Nana one day, my maternal Nana, and I was just saying, I don't know where the village is. And she says, oh, well, in her little accent, oh, well, honey, if you don't have a village, you must build one.
Wow.
She just had this way. And I was so I felt defeated, Trisha, to be totally honest. I didn't know what I had gotten myself into. I had postpartum depression. It was unidentified. I just felt like a miserable failure in every aspect of my life. And I think that's something we can all relate to in so many ways. And it's also something that, um, we allow to perpetuate when we are alone in it and we don't have
Mm.
somebody correcting us or reminding us that we're good enough. And so, I had started a Facebook page after that conversation with my Nana, and I called it Mamas for Mamas because that's what we called my mom when we were growing up was Mama, and every kid that needed a place to go for a warm meal or a place to sleep or someone to just listen to them and what was going on, they came to our house and my mama was everyone's mama. And so
Mm.
Mamas for Mamas was born. It was April 2014. And I just thought, well, why not? What's the worst thing that could possibly happen? It doesn't take off. It's not a success, and people don't want to give their stuff away for free in exchange for kindness. Whatever. If it doesn't work, then at least maybe I'll meet a cool friend or two that I can trade clothes with. And, at the end of the day, that's all I was looking for. Um,
Wow.
so, fast forward to where we are today. And it's a national poverty relief agency that has been developed out of a very intricate need and a needs assessment. From every community that we enter into, our goal is to make sure that we are finding the resources. And that's something that nonprofits generally don't provide as a service because essentially you are sending people to other nonprofits programs. You're giving them the statistics to then apply for more money for more grants. You are potentially in the backwards mindset of many nonprofit leaders, you are giving away a piece of your pie by going through this ongoing navigation and referral system, which I just disagree with so vehemently. I can't even express it properly in words. But if we collaborate and we find the resources that are available in our communities, first and foremost, we will be able to help the mamas right away with what's available. So let's say a food bank, other food security programs, might get you 2 weeks worth of food for the month. And then what do you do for the other 2 weeks if you have nowhere to go? Well, we identified that was a huge need. So we built the Mamas for Mama Sustainable Nourishment Program. And we don't go to the store and buy food. We decided that we were going to do things like your mama would. So we asked a landowner if we could have an acre of their land in exchange for giving them half of the eggs that our chickens produce that we decided to now become hen mamas. I don't know. It was just like finding creative ways to very complex socioeconomic situations that really have a pretty simple answer. If you care about your neighbor and you're building a longer table instead of a higher fence, everybody's going to have what they need. So yeah, I mean, really at this point, Mamas for Mamas has blossomed into something that I think had just so much need. And it's not just the online sharing economy or the peer to peer support that, is more than 1 million donations and trades are going on between our 62 branches across Canada, saving things from the landfill, redistributing the items that are still in good condition, redistributing the wealth really at the end of the day. So these mamas aren't spending their next $100 on the stroller they need. They can spend it on food because they were given a stroller. And that's
Mm.
what we like to call a hand up, not a handout.
Right. Wow. 62
There's
locations?
62. Yeah. So it's interesting the way we do things. It's always backwards. Let me just throw that out there right at the beginning because people always say, how do I start a branch of Mamas for Mamas? And I say, well, it's kind of like a nonprofit. Franchise is the wrong word, but let's use that just for the sake just for the sake of not having another word. But it's a nonprofit franchise that you buy into with your sweat equity and your love to give back. So when you have an interest in opening a new branch, for example, I just met two of the most amazing women in Red Deer, and they are one's a social worker and one is a doula. Perfect fit for mamas. You've got somebody who can do the resource navigation right away. You've got a doula who is well versed in maternal health and the available services in their community, but also they are aware of what the gaps are. So I said to
Mm.
them, okay, listen, if we can start to get the group online really going and the community starts to engage, we have developed that online sharing economy, the peer to peer platform where mamas can ask each other for support, items, and help. And that platform helps us to identify what's not already available. Because when people don't have their needs met on the group, that's when it moves into the community safety net of the charity. And so
Oh.
it's just this like I said, backwards way. We don't open an office space and get a social worker who's paid to see mamas directly or to do the food programs right away. We basically work with community partners to redistribute what they are no longer using to the mamas directly so that we have 0% administrative overhead when we start any new branch. And in the nonprofit world, that is basically unheard of because who the heck wants to work for free? Well, people with purpose and passion, that's who.
So you're surrounded by people with purpose and passion
All day,
24/7.
every day. It
Wow.
is inspiring and exhausting sometimes because holy man, I wish I could keep up with some of the girls on our team. They're just so incredible that I'm like, oh my gosh, when do you sleep?
We'll talk about impact burnout maybe a little bit later on, but
Oh my goodness, yes,
it's a very
yes. I
real
have
thing.
gone through it and I've come out of it. And my God, am I ever grateful to be on the other side?
You have lots of wisdom to share on that for sure. Let's go back to okay, you're a 26-year-old mom of two little kids, two under the age of 3. Been
Yeah.
there, totally overwhelming. You got
Oh
the
yeah.
hormone thing going on. You got the I need community. I want to make some friends. I feel alone. Undiagnosed postpartum depression. I mean, all these things
Yeah.
coming together. So you throw
Yeah.
this out there on Facebook. Tell me about the process. Like, was it maybe someone reached out and said, "Hey, I'll take a trade," or and what
Yeah.
was that? Maybe the first like 6 months. What was that like for you?
It was grueling. That is really the only word I can think of. I was so damn determined to make sure that this was going to be a safe, supportive space for women that I just did it all myself in the first while. So anytime somebody put a post up that was, I'm looking for, a baby seat or a car seat or whatever it might have been, I made it my mission to find it. Often I'd even go to buy and sell pages and buy it because I didn't want to have to say no. And I was in a financially well, I was in a good position financially. My dad had passed away and left me with some money that I felt guilty having. And so, of course, I, supported my family. We bought a house and things like that. But it was like I have this extra financial capacity to make this mama's life so much better. And if she then takes that and turns it into a ripple effect, like what a community we would have where mamas are truly out there looking after each other. And even mamas that don't know each other because of this collective conscious thread that runs through all of us that somehow we have kind of pushed off to the wayside. So it was me and my two babies and my truck, and I'd load it up. First thing in the morning, we would do 3 or 4 pickups, and then we'd do 3 or 4 drop offs. And it was just, it was filling my cup in a way that even if it hadn't gone any further than that, I would have been so proud and so pleased at the ability to even just connect mothers during a time when competition is so fierce on every level. And after about 6 months or so, some traction really started to pick up. And then people were like, "Hey, I want to give you the items directly. I don't want to do the peer to peer because I don't want to have to wait for her to pick it up from my house or whatever the situation may have been." And so I started taking donations in to my garage. Well, soon after, I had a garage full of items, and I'm thinking, what in the hell am I going to do with 72 bags of baby clothes? So then I thought, well, you know what? Let's go out to the Boys and Girls Club gym. We had a crew of volunteers at that point, 3 or 4, who were just dedicated. They were right in there like a dirty shirt. And we all loaded up our vehicles from my garage and we drove down to the Boys and Girls Club gym. We spent a couple hours putting everything out on tables, kind of like a free thrift shop. And we just let people come in and pick up whatever they needed at no cost. And it was like, oh, this is really cool. Like people are coming in, they're so happy. They have this look of relief on their face like they just won the lottery because they're able to pick up everything they need for their 2 3 kids for the next season. And we kind of thought, wow, wouldn't it be cool if we had a space where this was kind of set up all the time, where people could come in and they could drop off the items they were no longer using for their kids in good condition. Of course, we don't give away anything that's broken or anything. um, and then they could come in and shop for what they needed. And that's where the idea of the karma market came from, was really, again, just out of this natural growth into what mamas were asking for and continuing to find a creative, innovative way to meet the need with zero money. So we had a little bit, we had a storage unit, cost $200 a month. So, I was trying to do everything the right way. So bottle drives and, raise the money for the nonprofit. And then After the seventh bottle drive, I just paid for it myself because my boys and I were just exhausted and we just
They're a
needed to
lot of
pay for the
work.
storage unit. So,
Wow.
it was about December of that first year that I was like, you know what? I feel like I should turn this into a nonprofit. That was basically the first time I'd ever really thought about making it something greater than a Facebook group. But I had people being like, "Hey, I'll give you $500 for the Mamas for Mamas donation program, but can I get a tax receipt?" And I said, "What's that?" Not even kidding. It was like, "Oh, sure, a tax receipt. Okay, let me look into that." So I went back on Facebook and I posted, "Okay, guys, I'm starting a nonprofit. Does anyone have any idea what a tax receipt is and where I could start my bylaws or whatever they were called?" I was like, literally didn't know what a bylaw was. And it was actually our current mental health supervisor's husband, Mark, who popped up, and he sent me like two or three links. And he's like, "Go here, you can get your name registered here. And then, you can go to this website and register here." And he's like, "I'm so proud of you." And I'm like, "Oh my God, you don't even have kids and you totally get this. Okay, I'm doing it. That's it. I'm doing it." Like, I was
Wow.
just so jazzed. And so we registered as a nonprofit. December 1st, 2014 was when we became kind of legitimate, I guess you would say. But then it turns out, Trisha, you can't write tax receipts as a nonprofit. You need to now become a registered charity with the CRA. I'm like, "Oh, that can't be too hard. Whatever, it's fine. I'll just do it off the side of my desk after I'm done my sexual assault trauma work that I do." So I was doing full-time sexual assault trauma counseling, working with children and mostly children, but some men and women for childhood sexual abuse and current sexual abuse. So it was pretty heavy
Wow.
stuff.
I'm noticing I keep saying wow. I'm going to stop saying wow.
No, it's
I'm
fine.
just like, your story, it's just so organic. Like, it's just like, then this led to this. And that's,
I,
the best things in the
yeah.
world happen that way. But I'm like, okay, sorry, continue on. Yes.
Mm. Well, it's funny because I always say that if I'd ever tried to make it a big, successful charity like it is, I don't think it would have become what it is because I wouldn't have celebrated those little victories along the way like I did. I wouldn't have seen the value in the incremental scaling versus the, getting there tomorrow. It's like everybody wants to live at the top of the mountain, but all the goodness comes from getting there,
Hmm.
you know? Anyway,
Hmm.
sorry, I digress. But so we became a registered charity 3 years later. That's how long it took for me to convince Joanne Nadeau, I'll never forget her name, with the CRA because she was so great. I remember writing in and saying, "Okay, I have the best idea. I'm going to start a registered charity and it's going to support moms from all socioeconomic backgrounds." And she goes, "No, you can't do that. You have to support people either in poverty, under a religious mandate, under a sports mandate, or other. Those are the four ways you can become a registered charity in Canada. You're not allowed to help people that already have enough money." I said, "But Joanne, mental health is an issue too. Mental health poverty is rampant and just as big of an issue as financial poverty. And women who don't have the right access to the resources or the people with whom to discuss these issues, they're going to be experiencing a different level of poverty. So you tell me how that doesn't make sense." And she goes, "The CRA doesn't see mental health as a form of poverty."
You
So I said,
tried.
"Well, yeah." I said, "Well, we'll get to that later. All right. System change will come after this, but I need to get registered." I said, "Joanne, I am on to something. I have this great group of women and men, and we are killing it. I'm like, we're building programs, we are filling the gaps, and I feel like you need to just help me become a charity." So she says, "Listen, you need to do exactly what the CRA says, and that means you can only help people with the money that you raise and solicit through the poverty relief mandate. And if you do anything else outside of that without using any money and you want to be creative and find ways to get mamas from all socioeconomic backgrounds to connect," she goes, "keep it on Facebook. Do it that way." She goes, "But I can't register a Facebook group as a charity. It doesn't work that way." So here I am again, everything backwards. Most people start a charity and then they do a Facebook group to promote it or discuss it or complement it. So it was January 27th, 2017, that letter finally came in. And I'm actually getting goosebumps as I'm talking about it. And it almost makes me cry, which I might every time I think
Hmm.
about it, because you only get three kicks at the can. And that was our third kick at the can. And I was so convinced that this was my path, but it was up to an entity out there to determine whether or not I was going to be able to do it. And that is when I realized that that is exactly what these mamas face every day, when the ministry is telling them when they can see their kids, when the bank is telling them that they don't have enough to pay their mortgage or their rent. You know, it's when these mamas and these papas are facing institutions and they don't have the power to fight back and say, "Nah, Joanne, I'm gonna
Mm.
do this, and I just need to find a way." And I realized in that moment, holy shit, Mother Goose! Like I am going to fight the system. This isn't just about creating a safe space online anymore. This is about creating a safe space in society for mothers to be mothers and to do that without being punished for it. We should not have to lose out on every opportunity because we want to provide a great life for our children. And you know what? That's happening in so many families. And I just 100% was not okay with that. And so we started working on the band-aid right away, of course, but we started getting really, deeply into surgery. We started sitting on the poverty reduction committees at the local and provincial and the federal level. We started really looking into the why behind keeping these families in a position of powerlessness. And that is the epicenter of the why behind Mamas for Mamas is it's giving power back to the families that never should have had it taken away in the first place. Money is power. Knowledge is power. Connection is power. And a sense of belonging is the strongest predictor of mental health. And the poverty relief systems currently in place make all of that impossible. And I call BS.
So, in what ways do they make it impossible for those of us who've never? I mean, I was watching that video on your homepage or about page on
Yeah.
mamasformamas.org, and
Mm-hmm.
seeing the woman wake up and not have one diaper left, and then not have enough formula to feed, and it's like my
Yeah.
heart just breaks.
Yeah.
So, in what ways are you, now that you've gone through this process and you're in the position you are, like what is really holding these families back?
Well, I'd say there's a like 18 prong effect, but I'll just go with the first couple big ones. And
Hmm.
one of the biggest things is the poverty line is way too low. So when you make under $42,500 a year, you get all sorts of support from the government, which is incredible. But it also makes it very difficult to go back to work because as soon as you start going back to work, every dollar you make is taken off of the aid that you're getting from the government. So it really is kind of counterintuitive to go back to work for $13 or $14 an hour to pay $14 an hour for someone to watch your child, only for you to have that money then clawed back from what you were getting from the government as a subsidy support of some kind. So it's basically they're punishing you when you're trying to get ahead. If you are looking to access certain agencies, you need to sell your vehicle and every asset you have to show them that you don't have anything else to your name before they'll help you. I mean, why
Hmm.
are we putting people in a position where prevention isn't an option? This is what kind of drives me crazy. And I'm not even just talking social economy here. I'm talking basic dollars and cents economy. It costs way more to have a family fall into destitute poverty and have to go through the shelter system, which is thousands of dollars a month, go through the rehousing system, go through the job retraining system, go through getting back on their feet when we could have just helped prevent them from falling. I'd say it's probably 20% of the cost to put in a preventative measure to make sure these families don't end up homeless or they don't end up in a position where they have to sell everything they own just to qualify for some basic supports. And then at the end of the day, they're able to hold their head up high. They're able to pick up where they left off for whatever reason that they were in a financially difficult situation. If we give them a hand up out of that and allow them to move forward, they are costing less money for the government. They are basically allowing the workforce to bring them back in. They're then paying taxes. They are contributing back to the economy rather than taking from it. But I believe, and this is not a conspiracy theory, I swear, this is just my belief system, is that when we keep a certain number of people in powerlessness, it's a lot easier to get away with nonsense. And I think that, people that have experience in chronic poverty will say that poverty isn't a lack of wealth, it's a lack of justice. And that is what I'm going after here.
Wow. One thing that really strikes me as you share your story about how Mamas for Mamas grew is your openness to learning and level of adaptability and innovation as it evolved. And I'm imagining it
Yeah.
continues to evolve. So I think people who are
Yeah.
listening who have companies of their own or platforms or have ideas to be aware that it's the adaptability and the innovation to evolve as you
Yeah.
go, right?
Absolutely. And it's making a plan just because you're going to break it. It's great to have a plan and it's great to have goals to put in front of you. And it's really important to be able to pivot when those goals shift and when the
Mm.
needs shift. COVID really highlighted that for us in a big way. It could have taken us out completely if we were complacent, um, which we're not. Um,
Clearly.
but it was the most stressful couple months of my entire life. I have 23 staff members who are some of my all-time favorite people on this planet. They are such incredible human beings, and it was just not in the cards to lay them off. They were helping people out of poverty. I was not about to put them in poverty as a result of the pandemic and everything flipping on its head. So, we had been event-based as a fundraising model in many ways. We had put too many of our eggs in one basket, and that's something I learned a great deal about in pivoting through COVID. Is that what? You absolutely need at least five buckets from which you pull revenue in any company, whether it's for profit, nonprofit, whatever the situation. You can't depend just on grants. I've never depended just on grants. I've depended mostly on community based solicited funding because then we can also be creative with the funding and we don't have to help people that are just under the government mandated poverty line. So that's the other thing is that when you get all the money from the government, they tell you where to spend it and how to spend it. And if you want to help somebody who is over that $42,500 poverty line, no thank you. And again, you're making 60 grand a year with a family of four, you're still 10 grand under the poverty line for Kelowna's cost of living. So what are those families supposed to do?
Hmm.
It's mind-boggling, really. Um, but I digress. Once again, I just got onto a tangent.
No, it's very illuminating. Okay, let's go back to that moment in your life when you're working full time, helping adults and youth with um, sexual trauma,
Yep,
essentially, right?
yep,
Okay, so that is very heavy. Can't even
yeah,
imagine that.
yeah, it was
And you
tough.
have two young children,
Hmm.
and you've started Mamas for Mamas, and it's taking off, and it's evolving and growing, and you're learning. And at
Yeah.
what point did you step into your leadership role? At what point were you like, okay, that like that change
Yeah.
in mindset?
Yeah.
Do you
Oh
remember when
man,
it
that's a
happened?
great question. I would love to be able to say that it was sooner than it was. But I'm going to say right now. I stepped into many versions of a leadership role over the last 4 years, and none of them were as vulnerable as they needed to be. And I was trying to bring too much masculine energy, that dominant power.
Hmm.
When it came to some of my leadership tactics, I think anyway, as I'm doing a really solid reflection of myself as a leader, I would say that right now I'm stepping into the real leadership role as the CEO of Mamas for Mamas Canada. But you know what? No, the first day I walked into our new office space. So that was May 1st, 2017. We'd just become a registered charity. It was actually a little office space just down the street from my sexual assault trauma treatment clinic. And my coworker actually saw it and she goes, "Oh, I think we found our space." So we went in, we took a look. It was $3,600 per month. We had $300 in the account. So of course I signed a 5-year lease right then. I said, you know what? This is my space. I need it. I'm committing to it. And in that moment, when I shook Tom's hand, the sweet landlord is just, I'll owe a debt of gratitude to him for the rest of my life because he helped make that happen. And he knew we couldn't afford it, but he knew that I was going to find a way. And and I did. I actually put my house up for sale that year and I pulled another 100 grand out of the equity and we bought a smaller house so that we could continue on with that journey. And just in case we didn't have the grants right away, or just in case we didn't have the fundraising dollars in the bank for the hard costs as I was learning the language, I knew that I was just going to fund it because it was just that important. So in that moment when I made the decision to take the leap of faith is when I first stepped into my leadership role.
That is definitely a leap of faith. And I think
Whew.
that's a hard one for a lot of people to take that next step. And for anyone listening, it's not like a step you have to take. It can show
No.
up in many different ways.
Well, yeah, and I wouldn't recommend, as a business advisor, not that I'm a business advisor, but I wouldn't recommend selling your home to run a nonprofit. I did that against a lot of advice, although my husband was behind me 100%, and that's the only person that mattered at that time. And so, yeah, on a wing and a prayer, but I would say next time I'd probably take out a shareholder's loan.
The things we learn, right?
Exactly.
Someone listening right now is like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Writing that
Yeah.
down.
Like actually though, there was a lot more opportunities for me to have pulled the funds from somewhere else. But you know what? I'm glad I did it the way I did because I didn't want to live in that big house anyway. I didn't need it and it wasn't me. So
Hmm.
the universe brings you to where you need to be.
Let's talk a little bit about the whole, if you don't mind, the partnership thing. That was good wisdom, by the way. Because I think a lot of people who want to make impact, especially maybe if they're with their partners in their business or their,
Yeah.
your husband, like, so how do you show up and say, this is what I believe in? I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds like you have a really supportive partner.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's been a time or two where you feel like you have to maybe justify, or maybe there is guilt or there isn't. I don't know. I know my own
Uh,
business as a mom working, I felt different versions of that kind of guilt.
yeah.
How do you manage that? What have you learned navigating those waters?
Oh, such a good question. Like, okay, so I met my husband when I was 18. We've been together 16 years, and we've grown up together as a result of that. He was 24, so he had his poop in a group at a different level. You know, he's finished school and had a house and everything. But when we first met, he fell in love with the passion in me, and I knew that. And there was something about Mamas for Mamas that he loved as much as I did. And although, yes, there have been many times where, for the most part, the only frustration he has is that I am so busy with work that he doesn't get enough time with me. You know, it's a pretty
Mhm.
good problem to have when your partner is only upset with you because he just loves you so damn much and wants to be with you, and you're out helping the mamas and changing the world and haven't been home in 3 days. And, that was really the point of struggle for us and for me because I just felt like I couldn't say no to any opportunity. And I really truly felt like every time anything presented, if I didn't take it, mamas could go under, and that would be the reason. And that's a perfectionistic mindset that is really unhealthy. Um, kind of like what Brené Brown says, I'm a recovering perfectionist, one day at a time. Um, but you know what? We've done some really important work around that. I did some intuitive meditation work. I did a coaching actually, so I could learn to coach intuitive meditation for our mamas. But
Mm.
in the process of doing that, I realized that I was always reaching, I was always striving, I was always trying to be more than just the authentic, vulnerable me. And it made me always want to go out and do more, one more thing. And I realized the impact that was having on my family and not just my husband, but my boys. I had somehow convinced myself that because they had a roof over their head and loving parents and food and anything they could need, that if I wasn't around all the time, that would be okay. Because I was out helping families that didn't have a roof over their head or food to eat. And you know what? I was wrong. Just going to throw it out there. That's the biggest lesson that I have learned in all of this when it comes to the struggles with my husband and I understanding what I'm doing in the world. And even before I was getting paid, it was a bit of a struggle. When I was volunteering 60 hours a week, I quit my full time trauma therapy job where I made good money and I had benefits and I had, kind of our life was starting to get set up. And I said, oh, by the way, though, I'm going to sell our house. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to volunteer until mamas can pay me. And he goes, do you think that's the wisest financial decision? And I said, no, but kindness is my currency.
How do you argue with that, right?
I know, and he's an engineer, so he's all numbers, he's all brain, he's the smartest man I know, and he's all logic. But you know what? When it comes to me, he's all love. And he knew this was something that not only I needed to do, but he was really proud of it. I remember saying one time when I was really burnt out, because I did go through a very, very nasty burnout in 2018. And I remember saying to him, what if we just turned it back to a Facebook group? What if I just went back into counseling full time? What if I just admit defeat? I said, I don't think I can do this, Dell. I don't think I have the guts. I don't think I have the lady balls. And I said, my heart hurts every day because I can't say yes. I can't I can't solve these problems and I'm feeling helpless. And he said, then be better. Work harder, do more. He goes, you can't let this go, Shan. No way. He goes, every single person that you have helped in this community needs you. And they're going to turn to help the next person. You can't stop the train now. And he goes, honestly, Shan, even if you wanted to turn it back into a Facebook group, you've done so much now that I don't think anyone would accept that. He goes, I sure don't. And
Wow.
yeah,
So you picked your lady balls up.
yeah, right off the floor.
Yeah.
Right off the floor. And I thought, okay, you know what? And there was, some turnover with our team around that time, and I was feeling like a massive failure. So this is the thing is I was taking it personally as a leader. If anybody who had worked with us leading up to this point was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go and work for money now, and I'm like, excuse me,
Mm.
what do you mean you're leaving mamas? And I had to really learn that people are in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And just because I truly believed that, a couple of the women who had founded Mamas with me, or who had, were there right from the beginning, um, I thought they were going to be there until the end. But you know what? They were there until their end. And then they found something that had inspired them through Mamas, and they built a new journey for themselves. And that's something that I was upset about in the beginning because I felt like I lost them. But in reality, the community had gained them. And so it made me realize, like, I want to be the kind of leader that has a team that everyone wants to poach. And you know what? They will get poached because they're that good. And if that's the case, I just have to be that proud of them that they're taking the leap and they're taking the next step. But 2018 was the first time one of our core staff volunteer mamas, had kind of gone on her own way. And I just thought, I have failed. I have failed as a leader. I have failed as a manager. I don't know what to do to make this better. And so I became a doormat, and I started letting everybody tell me what they wanted. And I was, kind of engaging in collaborative management, always asking everybody's opinion. Well, what do you think? And what do you think? And that's what I mean when I say that right now is when I feel like I'm really stepping into my big girl panties, blazer Shannon, where
Mm.
I truly feel like I don't need to get approval and permission from every single person who's involved with the situation. Yes, I'll get their insight. Yes, I'll make sure I hear them, but I need to be able to make a decision based on my knowledge, the big picture view, and my intuition. And I've stopped questioning myself as of the last month or so. Very recently, I've stopped questioning myself, and I've actually given myself permission to be vulnerable and to be wrong and to be right. You know,
Mm. Yeah. I
I'm
think that
just
right part is almost the strongest part of that sentence.
and as
Mhm.
women we're taught to be so soft in our approach to being right,
Mhm.
that we are almost afraid of asserting ourselves and our opinions for fear of being a bully or a bitch or a bulldozer, or what other words have we been described as women, that men would then be described as efficient and dominant and productive.
Confident.
Confident, and
Mhm.
so I've really just kind of honed my approach to being very connected to the feminine energy, but with enough of that backbone that the team knows that I mean business, but I also mean business with Buddha in my heart.
Hmm.
It's like we are always here for each other. We are always this incredibly supportive team, but we are also accountable. We are also, responsible for the lives of very high risk families. And it is up to us to be professional. It is up to us to be poised for these mamas who are in that state of trauma, that state of fight or flight. It's up to us to have that calm nervous system from which they can mirror and start to come down.
Wow. Can I just say that the last 5 minutes of this conversation, I think, were some of the most important and powerful minutes of this podcast to date.
Thank you. I'm glad. I'm
Yeah.
getting right into it.
Oh my gosh. Like just the idea that, you want to have a team that people can poach just from a leadership and impact perspective, but also as from a human side, like,
Yeah.
you business with Buddha in your heart. I mean, so thank you for sharing that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
And
of
thank you for
course.
being so honest about your journey because that's not the easiest thing to do.
Well, I've just started to realize that, like being vulnerable is where real innovation comes from. It's
Hmm.
where real change comes from. And if we're not willing to look inside to ask, what is it that is triggering me here? Or what is it that is making me react this way? Why am I not responding? Why am I reacting? If we're not willing to look inside for those answers, how can we expect the mamas to come to us and trust that we're going to do the same for them?
That's a really big question.
You
That's a
know,
really good one.
if we're
Yeah.
not willing to do our work, why are we asking and expecting the others that we're serving to do the same? We are here in service. We are here in support, and we are here in solidarity. We are not here to do unto them. We are here to do things with them. And if we can't do our own work, and we haven't done our own work, we can't walk that journey with them as the guide. We simply can't, and it's inappropriate to do so.
Wow.
So we do a lot of work on our team. We just did a psychological health and safety workshop last Friday. I ran it. I was just trying to make sure the team knew that we have psychological health and safety practices in the workplace, and whatever it is that you're going through, there's somebody on the team that can support you. We offer benefits to all of our teammates because we don't want them having to choose whether or not they are paying the $290 a month for their extended benefit plan. Because many of the mamas that we have on our team came to us as clients, and they've worked their way up through the ranks. I don't want to put it on them to have to choose between proper groceries or the ability to have preventative health and wellness. So we cover it as part of the salary. And I think that that's a big, big issue in the nonprofit world, is that nonprofit leaders are so afraid to treat their staff well for fear the donors will think that their money is being spent frivolously. But once again, coming back to not just social economics and the need to be responsible for your team, but the economics, like the actual dollars and cents. Once again, if you are having high turnover and you're retraining people all the time because you're paying low, you're treating them poorly because you're expecting too much of them, and you're not engaging in an appropriate energy exchange, you're going to lose great staff, and you're going to end up having to pay more money to less qualified people simply because the culture isn't strong. A strong culture is a huge contribution to a long-term staff, which is the cornerstone of fiscal accountability and responsibility. As far as I can see, we don't want to be hiring new people all the time. It costs 10 times as much. So, I really do challenge the nonprofit leadership model that says that you have to pay your nonprofit staff as little as possible on the scale, and that you have to nickel and dime them for the time they need to take off for mental health days, or to drop their kid off to their Christmas concert, or whatever it is. It's like, you know what? No, if you don't nickel and dime your team socially, they will not nickel and dime you economically. It's just common sense, but I just don't understand how nonprofits in general seem to think that they are doing well by their donors by putting their staff in a position of scarcity. It's backwards to me.
I think these are lessons that are equally important for profit organizations as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I suppose the difference is with nonprofits, we have a board of directors that governs a lot of the ins and outs, and we have a great board. So that's, we have an opportunity to find a way to provide additional cultural supports and benefits and things like that to our team that are approved by our board, so that our team is supported preventatively, looking after their health and wellness. They are really and truly, they feel that sense of belonging. And
Mm.
if they are hurting, or if they are, they lost a loved one or anything like that, they don't need to worry about not being able to pay their rent if they need to go to their sister's funeral. And unfortunately, that is the case in most nonprofits, because they just don't have the money to pay for someone who isn't um, basically grinding at 100% productivity all the time. If you have a team that can be productive when they have flexibility as to when they're that productive, sometimes it's 11, 12, 1 a.m. when Christine is emailing me the daily updates because she was with her 4 kids all day. Like, flexibility is productivity.
Ooh, that's a good line.
Ooh, it is a good one. I like
That's a
that. I
yeah.
should write that
I'm gonna
down.
write that one down too.
That's a t-shirt, actually, Treasure. That's a t-shirt.
I think so. Flexibility is productivity.
It's just,
Well,
and these are just things I've picked up along the way, and seems to be working.
I think that there's so many lessons here for, again, nonprofit, for profit, impact
Yeah.
leadership in general.
Yeah.
I love that phrase you used, appropriate energy exchange.
Yeah.
That's really good too.
Yeah, because sometimes it's not all about the money, right? It's how you treat each other that often um, connects you to the why, and it's knowing your team's love languages. That's what we're doing next month, is the 5 workplace love languages test, so that we all understand each other's means of communication that are the most effective for them, so that when we're communicating, we can do it the right way the first time.
Mm-hmm. And meet people where they're at and what they need.
Absolutely. And when you meet them where they're at, they'll meet you where you need them to as soon as they can, every time.
What's your vision coming up, let's say 5 years from now, for Mamas and for yourself?
I would say, well, for Mamas, there will be a physical branch in every province within 5 years.
Wow.
So
Very cool.
the plan is for Kitchener-Waterloo out in Ontario to get a branch within the next year or so. That's the goal. We've got a pretty massive community growing Red Deer, Calgary area. And then we've got, some movement going on in the prairies as well. So, I'd like to see it go in definitely one physical location with staff in every province by the end of, what would that be, 2026?
Mhm.
About. And in the meantime, I'll be doing some education for myself to take me to a different level of leadership and skill set, so that in the next 5 years, I do plan to get my law degree so that I can support Mamas for Mamas at a higher level when it comes to the national expansion. I've come across a lot of situations where knowing the rules of society would help me greatly, and knowledge is power. My dad was a lawyer. It's been my dream my entire life. I got sidetracked in the beginning, but I've made the plan. I'm going to write my LSATs next year. I'm going to do the degree over the next 3-4 years, and then I'm going to, keep on keeping on. So I'm not going to leave Mamas while I'm doing it. I'm just going to find a way to balance that out. But that is my goal. That is my dream, and I'm going for it. So we'll see.
Wow. That's
We'll see.
very amazing. I'm so inspired right now. I feel very lazy, to be honest.
No, please don't. Oh no, I feel a little what did we call it? Chaos, crazy and chaos. I feel a little chaos.
Well, you're doing the
uh,
chaos very well. And I know there's
uh,
always ups and downs, but I just think what you're contributing to the communities within Canada and, here we're in the same community in Kelowna, British Columbia. It's just, again, being able to see the journey and watch it. It's very inspiring. And I think sometimes the work we do as impact leaders, yes, it makes impact, but it's also just doing the work and people seeing you doing the work is like
yeah,
inspiring too. And then it plants seeds in people's minds. Well, if she's doing it, well, maybe I could do something. If
totally.
companies want to be of support, so a lot of the people listening are either HR leaders or CEOs or have their own company, and they want to weave impact into their organization. Is there any way that companies can collaborate or use Mamas for Mamas as an
Mhm.
outlet for their own kind of social enterprise?
Oh my goodness, yes. Well, I'll just give you a quick
Okay.
example. We have a 1% partnership with the most amazing company on the planet, Modern Pure Air. They do duct cleaning and air purification. How does that relate to mamas, you might ask? Well, I'll tell you. They came in with a donation of diapers one day. April came in and she goes, "Hey, I run this thing called the Pure Kids Foundation. 1% of the funds from every branch of Modern Pure Air goes back into their local communities, but we don't have someone to really vet the people who are asking for help. And we were just kind of wondering, if you guys could help us with that." So we now have, I think it was $80,000 over the last 15 months, they've donated back into the local communities the money was raised. So Kelowna gets about $800 to $900 every month. And we use those funds to do 100% zero overhead. So if we get $892, then $892 goes towards the Fill the Gap dental program, the farm program, the direct client support for a mama or a kid who is struggling with a severe medical crisis of some kind. And then we get to every month send them a kindness chronicle that outlines their impact and what they have helped us to do in terms of, Red Deer not having an actual physical branch is not an issue because they have $1,000 in their bank account right now because of Pure Kids. So they're able to do direct client support before they've had to engage in the arduous task of fundraising. So any company who wants to get involved with Mamas for Mamas on a donor level, oh my God, there's a plane flying over me right now. I'm sorry
You have a lot
if
of
you can hear that.
planes that go by you. It's
I
it's
really
it's
do.
very active.
Yeah, I live by the airport. It's awesome for podcasting. And I would do it, I'd be inside, but my kids like YouTube is blaring. It's just a whole
It's
situation, Trisha.
it's all good. We
It's
hear
a,
you. It is all good. So yes, so if a company wants to get
so
in
yes,
partner involved,
they can honestly just reach out to partnerships@mamasformamas.org, or even Shannon is my email at mamasformamas.org, and we can get you set up with whatever works for you. Like, we want the partnerships that we engage in to be mutually beneficial. So some people like to donate in kind. We had Hello Bello donate 30,000 diapers, and we gave them a tax receipt and a great shout out on social media and a big thank you. And that's all they wanted. Some people want to do $5 from every sweatshirt or candle or beer or whatever it is that they sell, and they give it back to Mamas for Mamas as their impact, contribution. And then we get to tell them, this is what we did with it. This is how your donation has helped us with this mom who was, she lost her leg and she wasn't able to get a ramp built, but because of your $1,500 donation and the community coming in to donate the wood, and then the construction guys that came in to donate the labor, we were able to build a $6,000 ramp for a mama who lost her leg for about $1,500. And thank you. And this is what, you have contributed for her. Now she gets to play with her son outside. It's not just about her mobility. It's about her attachment with her son. It's about her connection to the world. And so it's so much more than a donation when you donate to Mamas for Mamas. It is contributing to the perpetuation of a movement of no mama left behind.
I love that. This has been such a fabulous conversation. So much wisdom from a leadership perspective to personal empowerment perspective. I actually feel like we could go on for a long time here, but I'm looking at the time. So why don't we, again, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. One last question before we kind of tie it all up. And I, put you on the spot a little bit, as I love to do at the end, but what is the best piece of wisdom that you have ever received?
Oh man, from like a professional coach or from like my Nana? Because
Oh man, go with the Nana.
I know.
Or anywhere really, something that comes to mind. You're like, this has become a mantra for me.
Okay. Honestly, when in doubt, be kind. There is so many opportunities to choose kindness, and I don't think we do it as often as we could. And that's from a leadership perspective. That is from a personal perspective. That is from every perspective I have. If you don't know what's going on, chances are, if they're giving you a hard time, it's because they're having a hard time. Tenfold. When in doubt, be kind.
That's powerful, and it's so simple.
And it's just common sense. But you know what? Common sense isn't so common anymore.
Yeah, seems that way. Well, Shannon, you know what? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I can't wait to meet you in person and
me too.
Stalk you on social media now. It's my new favorite leadership guru.
You are so awesome. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to be on, and I'm certainly no expert, but I'm willing to learn. And I think that, as my dad would say, be the dumbest person in the room, and you'll always be smart as you need to be. Be willing to learn.
Wisdom.
Yeah, he's a smart guy.
Thank you, Shannon.
Okay, thanks, Trisha. It was so great to chat.
Passion for Impact is sponsored by the Inspire Store. Need a gift that inspires? Inspire Store features exclusive ethically made goods and jewelry that embodies these 3 words: yes, you can. Every purchase supports Food Banks Canada. Plus, you will receive Trisha Miltimore's popular personal development Shift Up e-course. Empowerment awaits you. Shop with impact at inspirestore.org.
If you love learning how to live and lead in a conscious and fulfilling way, and you find this show inspiring, please share with your friends, rate and review this podcast. It really helps. Hey, thanks for listening. Remember, cast your vote, make your impact, one socially conscious choice at a time.
Thank you for listening to the Passion for Impact podcast. Visit passionigniter.ca/podcast to subscribe for episode notes, links, and special offers from show guests. Cast your vote, make your impact, one social